All right, well, good evening, church family. Thank you so much for tuning in with us tonight. And we are thankful that you decided to join us here this evening. We're in Revelation chapter number 3. Let me just thank you for participating with us this morning. God gave us a great Sunday. And whether you were in person with us here on campus or whether you just watched online, we thank you for your faithfulness. But we are this evening in Revelation chapter number 6. We're going to be verse number 1 to verse number 8. And now we're getting to in this section of Revelation, we're getting to really the end things, the end times. The church has been raptured away, and now we're coming to a lot of the trumpets, the seals, the vials, destruction, judgment, and a lot of, the beast, the Antichrist, the woman, all these things. And so in order to help us walk through this, I got these two guys. They're the experts for us, and they're going to help us walk through this section. I think it'd be a little more interesting as we study through this, be able to ask questions and anticipate questions that perhaps you might have on sections like this, and we'll do our best to try to answer them amongst ourselves. Sometimes they'll ask, sometimes I'll ask, and we'll see. I think between it all, it'll be an enjoyable study. So Revelation 6. Now, you'll need to remember a couple things about Revelation, and that is, first of all, that this is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Not revelations, but revelation. So it's singular, not plural. And it's singular because it's unveiling for us one thing, and that is Jesus, right? It's showing us Christ, and it's unveiling for us not his earthly ministries. That's what the Gospels did, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They show us Jesus' earthly ministry. The book of Revelation shows us Jesus' eternal ministry. The book of Revelation, or the Gospels rather, show us Jesus as a servant, as a shepherd, suffering on behalf of his people, dying on the cross for our sin. He's the Lamb of God slain. But the book of Revelation is Jesus on his throne in eternity with God, Jesus seated in power. And it shows us Jesus as the lion, right? The lion of the tribe of Judah. And this is important to understand about the end time, or eschatology, which literally means the study of end things. That's what it is. It's important to know that biblical eschatology is linear, right? It's moving in a line. It's going from A to B. It's moving in a particular direction, which is different than perhaps the spirit of the age or the way in which the world would see how time progresses. The world would say time is moving in circles, right? It's just repeating itself over and over, or it's chaotic, right? It's just chaos. There's no rhyme. There's no reason. We're matter that's just evolved, and so we're just feeling our way.
Chemical reactions that are just fizzing out.
And we're surviving, right? We're surviving, and only the strong obviously survive. So we're surviving. But a biblical understanding of end times is we're moving to an event.
It's culminating towards something.
What is the something that it's moving toward? What is it culminating in? And the book of Revelation is it. It's culminating in the kingdom of Jesus. It's culminating in the kingdom of God coming to bear in this world, right? That He's bringing us back. He's redeeming us to what his original purpose for us was. So you're seeing here Jesus' authority. 3 ideas about this just before we get to Revelation 6. You have in Genesis, you have Jesus' authority that's promised. So you have God saying to Adam and to Eve, I'll give a seed of the woman who will step on the head of the serpent. This is Genesis 3. The seed of the woman steps on the head of the serpent. He crushes the head of the serpent. So that's sin, Lucifer, the death, hell, the grave. He crushes it, and he is wounded in the process. And that's obviously an understanding of his crucifixion, right? Yep. So he's buried, then he rises again from the grave. So you have Jesus' authority that's promised. You have Jesus' authority that's proclaimed when Jesus, after his resurrection, shows himself alive. He ascends up into heaven, and he says, as he ascends, right, that Great Commission passage, as he ascends, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. So all power is given, right? Not will be, not was, it is. It belongs to him, that power on heaven and in earth. And as a result of the power belonging to him, we as believers are to go out into the world and make disciples, right? So this is Jesus's authority that's promised in Genesis. It's proclaimed in Matthew. And now in the book of Revelation, it's fulfilled. It's the fulfillment of, and that's what we saw in chapter 5. Who's worthy to take the scroll, right? Who possesses the possession? It's in the hand of God. Who has the right, who has the ability, and who has the willingness to take the possession that belongs to God. And of course, no one's worthy except Jesus, right?
Yeah.
The Lamb is worthy. And so he turns, John sees the Lamb, and of course, at the end of Revelation 5, they worship. So the church is raptured away in the presence of God. That's what we're witnessing in heaven, the same thing that John just witnessed. And Jesus opens the book. He opens the scroll. Okay, so that's a lot. You guys want to jump in on any of that? I feel like I've done all the talking.
Well, I'm looking forward to that day
Yeah, absolutely.
that we're worshiping around the throne.
Okay, so here we go then. Revelation chapter 6, and we're just going to walk through the first 4, right? It's the 4 horsemen who Chad thinks the 4 horsemen, it was, who'd you say it was? Ric Flair.
Ric Flair, Arn Anderson.
That's not this. It's not, what is this, like some wrestling thing you watched?
Come on, WCW.
It's not that. That's a joke. This is real.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. Verse number 1, and let's go the first 2 verses. We'll take the first horse. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals. Okay, so remember, the Lamb is Jesus. I saw Jesus opening one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, a noise of thunder, and one of the 4 beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow and a crown, and was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. So the very first seal that's opened, right, the first seal that's pulled back in the scroll or the book is this white horse, right, that we are calling the horse of deception, the horse of deception. One writer says about the rider on this horse, it says he is the dark prince on a white horse. And this person essentially imitates the Lord Jesus Christ, right? You're going to see further information on this person in Revelation 14, Revelation 19. We would know this individual as the Antichrist. So this is an imposter, and he comes as a way that kind of initiates the tribulation. So Christ has returned. When Christ returns, he ends the tribulation, but the coming of the Antichrist begins the tribulation period. So whenever the Antichrist comes, you know that this is the start now of what is understood as the tribulation. And notice this man conquers. Look at the end, verse number 2. He went forth conquering and to conquer. And you'll notice he has a bow, but he doesn't have arrows. And you'll notice he has a crown. He has, so the crown is an image or a picture of authority. So he has some kind of authority in the world. He has a bow, but he has no arrows. So it gives the image there that he's coming in this sense of peace, but he does have this sense of power, but he can't actually do anything, right? He doesn't actually have any real authority or power on his own. And then you'll notice he comes with a bow, but you'll remember when Jesus comes with a sword dipped in blood, right? So it looks as if he's powerful, but he actually isn't powerful at all. It looks as if he's winning, but he isn't winning. He's going to lose. He's going to lose bad. But he comes with this sense of saying peace, peace, but there's no peace. It's really a fulfillment of what Jeremiah talked about. So Jeremiah chapter 6, you'll remember where Jeremiah speaks about the end times, that this man comes, he says, peace, peace, when there is no peace. He promises peace, but he actually isn't able to deliver it because he doesn't bring it with himself. Look as an interesting passage. Look backwards to like Matthew chapter number 24. Matthew 24, you'll see kind of a same thing, the same idea. Jesus talking about the end times. And look at verse 4. And Jesus answered, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And you'll see all the way through here, just this it really kind of mirrors what's happening in Revelation chapter 6. But you'll notice, look at verse number 11. Many false prophets deceive you. Look at verse 15. You see the abomination of desolation spoken of Daniel by the prophet. I mean, all the way through this passage, he has this same idea that there's this one who comes, and he comes with this sense of power. Look down in verse number, I just had it. Look at verse 23. Then if any man shall say to you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christ, false prophets, that shall show signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. So he's saying, look, this day is coming. This will happen, that there'll be this person who comes onto the scene, which is being fulfilled in Revelation 6. There's this person who comes onto the scene who pretends he's an imposter. He imitates Christ, but he actually isn't. He's antichrist. He's opposite Christ. He's opposed to Christ. So this antichrist comes into the scene, and obviously he's going to be really a primary player as the world comes to an end.
And he's gonna get a following, a large following, right?
A large following.
Like as in most of the human population, right?
He has a large following on a global scale. How could that happen?
So the question that comes to my mind is, how can one person actually get that big of a following? And actually, history is replete with examples
Absolutely.
of men who got huge followings of people to do unbelievably terrible things, just to show us that this actually is something that's going to happen, and we've actually seen it happen. Think about Hitler.
Mhm.
How did he get the population of Germany to get on board with what he was doing?
Right.
You have images of at his rallies, and I mean just thousands and thousands of people that are in unity and in solidarity with what he's trying to do.
Right.
And this is going to be that on an even much greater and much more terrible scale.
You think about it. I mean, you think about people who have gathered, mass followings as politicians. It's kind of rare for them to have followings outside of their own countries.
Yeah.
When perhaps, could it be that the Antichrist is a celebrity or maybe some kind of athlete or someone who is gathering attention on a global scale, not just in their own government by their own people,
Right.
that then uses that power and changes.
Well, that goes hand in hand with what we see we've heard in recent years, and it's certainly continuing even right now. This effort to globalize, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the world has gotten a lot smaller, right?
Absolutely.
The world has
Yeah.
gotten a lot smaller, and so we're just seeing these things play out. How one person could get such a global following.
Could
Absolutely.
have that many people know who they are, know what they believe, and
Yeah.
be able to communicate to them
Absolutely.
easily.
And the world is, I mean, clearly the world is a much smaller place, and information, followings, popularity,
Yeah.
right, is done in a on a much more global scale. I mean, we'll have people who watch this from Australia,
Right.
We'll have people who watch this in the Philippines. We have people who, they're always, hey, watching from, even something small. We're by no means celebrities. Well, I mean, Chad, obviously, Chad has
Sal.
Those Brad
He-
Pitt looks.
yeah, those celebrity looks that Chad brings to the table. But you could see even through the means of that have been afforded to us through media and technologies, which none of these things are bad, but you could see the use of these things as a way in
how
which
they're gonna come into play. And I
Yes.
mean, Christians and even unbelievers who would have read this and mocked this 100 years ago, how is that even going to be possible?
right,
Mhm.
It's amazing how, in the spirit of human advancement,
right,
and how humanism says, hey, look how we're advancing technologically, and this just proves, that
Right.
we can. And all that actually was just little fulfillments.
yes.
God allowing these things so
Right.
that these kind of things can be put into place.
Yeah, but and even too, like I would say, you see how the Antichrist does this, right? And let's take Hitler as the example. He clearly isn't the Antichrist.
Right.
Okay, he's dead.
Yep.
So, which is better for everybody right now.
Right.
So, but how does he do this? He has indoctrination, right? He indoctrinates. He puts out his Mein Kampf, right? He has this indoctrination message. He eradicates basically all Christian witness from Germany. So he silences pastors. He arrests them. Bonhoeffer is the most probably famous example of that. If you haven't read the biography on Bonhoeffer, you should definitely go read it. It's absolutely amazing. You talk about a man who resisted. This pastor like works into the plot of assassinating Hitler. Where does that fall in Romans 13? Right? I mean, like this guy, and
this is the author Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's the one that wrote The Cost of Discipleship.
Absolutely.
Which
So let's just like microcosm Hitler for a second. He indoctrinates, he mutes, eradicates all Christian witness from Germany, and then now what's left, right? Now all you have left are, these young pliable minds, and basically that's how it begins, right? The Hitler Youth Movement. You have these young pliable minds who are promised fame and fortune, right? Who are then now given to this brand new identity of, you are the most supreme person in the world. Your ethnicity is the most supreme ethnicity. So now go, and they're all inferior. Literally, it's a staple right out of what Nebuchadnezzar does, right? In Daniel chapter number 1. It's the same. You pull them, you isolate them, you indoctrinate them, you eradicate any Christian witness, you remove them from any strong convictions, you proclaim no absolute except the king, and now you must do what the king says, right? Yeah. And Nebuchadnezzar did it, Adolf Hitler does it, and you can see it being done even in our world today, where you have mass isolation. Most people don't even know how to engage in a friendly conversation about disagreement. So you're only indoctrinated. You follow people on social media who only contribute to the narrative that you already believe, right? And then when you mute the truth, right? When you silence the word of truth, you have no truth. Truth is light. And where you have no truth, you have no light. You're only left with lies, deception, darkness. It's easy to see because it's not only happened in history past. I mean, it's even happening in the present. So it's easy to see how someone can then rise to power in that moment. And you have to remember, Revelation 6 is after, this is mind-boggling, but this is after Revelation 4. In Revelation 4, the church is raptured.
So there is no Christian witness.
There is no Christian witness in the world. There is no Christian witness in the world at this time.
So if evil men can rise to power historically, even with the presence of the work of the Spirit in the life of Christians, how much more so at this time
Absolutely.
will he be able to easily take control without any kind of resistance?
Absolutely. And the point to be made is we're not trying to name who the Antichrist is, right? We don't need that in the comment section. I think the Antichrist will be, right? We don't need that. But we're just trying to help show you like how when you read Revelation, sometimes you get lost in like the bigness of it, the size of like how in the world could all of the, but this is a very real and present reality that could easily happen. And I think the world is primed at this moment. I mean, the apostles thought they were living in the last days. If they were last days, we're like,
last minutes.
Yeah. We've got a couple seconds on the clock, and it's easy to see how the world's primed for this kind of person to come to power. He promises some kind of this supernatural, this world peace. He comes in saying peace, 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 but he has no peace. He can't deliver on the peace promise.
Yeah, Pastor, I just had a thought. I know sometimes in the craziness of the news cycle, it feels like we're in chaos, right?
Absolutely.
But this is actually really comforting to me because it just reminds me that this actually we're not living in chaos. You mentioned earlier that the Christian worldview is linear. Like it may feel like in this little dot on the timeline
Yeah.
of chaos, but we're actually moving towards
Yes.
a culmination, and God is completely in control of what's happening.
And I think that's important because that's what the New Testament Christians would have taken away from this in John's writing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in persecution. John himself was dropped into a pot of oil and burned, and then sentenced to an Isle of Patmos. And what they would have taken away from this is, look, it's not just chaos. That's not all we're left with. We're moving toward a specific goal. What's the goal? The goal is not the Antichrist. The goal is Jesus, right? But in order for this to come about, these things must first take place. So very, very important to see. Okay, let's go now. The second horse, verse 3. And when so the he there is Jesus. Don't forget this. It's Jesus' authority. And when Jesus had opened the second seal, I heard a second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace, listen to this, to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. So you'll notice the first rider, he has a bow, but no arrows. But you have this second rider, he has this great sword. It's the image of destruction, the image of war. He brings this, and notice when he brings war into the world, he takes peace from the world. So I read an interesting thing, said there's an average of 44 wars going on around the world at any particular time. An average of 44 wars going on in some place. I read a story about Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein he did not like having his photograph taken, but a friend of his was a photographer, and Einstein was having a moment where he was really having this internal struggle that his work had contributed to the bombing of Hiroshima and the loss of life, which for him caused significant internal turmoil, So while he's in this place, the photographer, his friend, takes a picture of him, and the clack of the photograph kind of startles him, and his friend says, "Will we ever know peace again?" And Einstein answers, "No," and I'm quoting him here. He says, "No, as long as there is man, there will be war."
Wow.
As long as there is man, there will be war.
Pastor, if you don't mind me jumping in right here, I've talked to some people that I've known personally that they subscribe to a humanistic worldview, which says, I'll read it. I have a part of the Humanist Manifesto right here. It says, the next century can be and should be the humanistic century. Dramatic scientific, technological, and ever-accelerating social and political changes crowd our awareness. We have virtually conquered the planet, explored the moon, overcome the natural limits of travel and communication. We stand at the dawn of a new age, ready to move farther into space and perhaps inhabit other planets. Using technology wisely, we can control our environment, conquer poverty, markedly reduce disease, extend our lifespan, significantly modify our behavior, alter the course of human evolution and cultural development, unlock vast new powers, and provide humankind with unparalleled opportunity for achieving an abundant and meaningful life. And if you keep reading, what they're basically getting at is we can get as humans, we don't need this belief, this primitive belief in God. We can solve our own problems, and we can eventually get to a point where there will be no more war. And I've talked to people even recently who have subscribed to that, and they've become very disillusioned.
Right.
Because what they thought coming in, they would think surely in 2020, after all these thousands of years of human history,
Right.
we would have come to a point as human beings where we're no longer killing each other over these things. And what they're finding is that was actually a hope that could never be fulfilled.
Right.
Because it's absent of God.
Right.
And it's amazing to me that as much as human beings think they can push God out of the way and think that we can solve our problems on our own, all that ever ends up doing is just being a way that God fulfills his prophecy. Because what does God say? I mean, these same people that would have left, no, we'll never get to that. We'll never get to the point where there's war on this scale, because humans are getting better and better and better. Actually, it's further proof. God and his word is showing us. We can read
Right.
that human beings, we're not getting better and better. We're going to come to a point where there's war, like what we're talking about right now, that like we've never, on a scale that we've never seen before.
Right. And we've seen world war.
Yeah.
You know, like, but this far surpasses it.
Mm.
You know, and that's the idea.
Yeah.
I think too, like, you know, how could this happen today? Right? Like, how could this happen today? So I want Derek's conspiracy theories on this, but
Oh,
this
yes.
here's a statement. July 1945 in New Mexico, a test bomb went off. The atom bomb detonated in real time. It was filmed, photographed, analyzed, studied, and then later named a weapon of mass destruction. 3 weeks after it was detonated, President Truman used it, or one like it, to flatten the city of Hiroshima in Japan. And today, according to defense information, the United States, just the United States, claims to have an arsenal of 35,000 nuclear weapons. What we know is that there are 9 nations on the earth who have nuclear capability. We know of 9. Obviously, more and more are trying to find it each and every day. But there's 9 that claim to have it. How many warheads, right? How many warheads actually are represented, not just in those nations, but even the United States? I think it's fair to say we have more than 35,000, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it seems a little overkill. I mean, how many are necessary to disable a nation versus, you know, do you really need 35,000 atomic bombs?
In other words, 35,000 nuclear weapons is enough to basically make the whole earth.
So what you're saying is
Exactly.
this is a friend of mine who told me he just went out and he bought like 3 boxes of 1,000 rounds of ammo, like so just 3,000 rounds of ammo. Like, what are we doing that we need 3,000 rounds of ammo? That feels like whatever situation you find yourself in at that point that you've needed that much, it's a bad situation, right?
Your life is stressful.
Yeah. So same thing. Like how many nuclear warheads?
I don't think that it's only 35,000 in the United States.
I completely
Because
agree.
it's like when the
Derek?
doctor. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be. I don't think any nation's gonna be completely honest about what they have.
Right. It's like when you go to the doctor for a physical.
Yes.
And they're asking you, and then all of a sudden this question: do you own any firearms? It's like, why do you need to know that? But I'm not gonna, if which I don't by the way, but if I owned, 8 shotguns and 7 9mm, whoever,
Bazooka,
I'm not
some
bazooka,
C4.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell.
Derek
I'm not
Derek has
gonna-
all that at his
I'm
house.
not going to
actually.
be forthcoming.
Ten,
I'm
right?
not going to let them know everything that I have. That's because they're going to use that against
Wait,
me
so
at some point.
wait, your doctor asked you this for your checkup
For my physical check.
before they could tell you your physical health. They needed to know
They apparently needed to know if I owned a
because it was
firearm.
relevant in some way. I'm sure.
Right.
So, but the point to me, the point is, how in the world could you have war on a global scale? This kind of like major destruction that takes place, and I think it's easy to see, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could literally destroy countries
Yep.
in a matter of minutes. The launching of a few codes, and you could have an entire region of the planet that's just completely.
And the more technology is advancing, the more society is dependent upon the internet, on technology. Then the cyber warfare becomes even more prevalent, where you could cause
So
chaos
true.
in a nation without ever firing
What
a
a
shot.
great understanding.
I mean,
too.
what would we do if all of a sudden internet went out? Your bank says 0. Your money was now worthless. It's a free for all.
It's so interesting because it used to be like, well, I can't see how this evil power from this part of the world could get all the way to us in America because we're,
We have rockets that can shoot down missiles.
right. We have rockets that can shoot down missiles. We have the oceans that separate us. They couldn't even get close. But you could see like it wouldn't even have to be a bullet.
Those deterrents don't seem that effective anymore.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere the other day where like Bill Gates was like, well, even future wars aren't fought with bullets. Future wars are fought with exactly what you're saying. It's the disabling of technologies which we're so dependent on. I mean, even this right here, the disabling of technologies, the not able to withdraw money from your bank. We do all of that electronically now. And then even beyond that, you look at it just biologically, like how easy would it be where, you have not just the threat of physical war, but you have the threat and the capabilities of, significantly hindering an economy, releasing something biological,
Causing anarchy.
raising up of anarchy. Can anybody foresee something like this happening? Oh, wait. Well, wait, it's 2020. It feels like 2020 is the book, is Revelation 6, right? Like that's what it feels. Okay, so moving verse 5 then. And when he opened the third seal, he heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And behold, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts saying, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." So this is a horse of desolation, destruction, walking backwards, destruction, deception. This is a horse of desolation, verse 5 and 6. The idea here is that you will spend everything you have in order to find a loaf of bread. That's really the idea. Walver here on this point says, to the ordinary language, these verses mean that the situation would be such that one would have to spend a day's wage for a loaf of bread with no money left to buy anything else. Life is reduced to the barest of necessities. I don't know, whenever I read that line, the Jungle Book comes to mind. The bare necessity. Yeah, okay. Famine is famine almost always follows war. Obviously, transportation's it, supply chains are. I think of like World War II, where the Luftwaffe is intentionally targeting factories in London, food supplies, warehouses.
Should we define what the Luftwaffe was?
What is it, Chad?
That was the Nazi, basically the Nazi Air Force.
That's
right?
the Nazi Air Force, which you said you couldn't pronounce the Luftwaffe.
Yeah.
You were saying what? You love waffles? That was how you were pronouncing it?
Something like
You
that.
thought it was, we love waffles. So you wonder why they were such bad people, but they weren't dropping waffles and syrup. Lego my ego type stuff. No, these were bad. And they were intentionally targeting, these kind of things. And now you can see how, look, that's a microcosm of how this could happen, futuristically. What's happening here is you have people who are giving all of their, their work, their resources just to buy bread, right? So there's a run on the necessities. I think, remember when everybody was running and they were buying toilet paper? Right? Remember that?
It seems so long ago.
Yeah. It kind of tells you like the level of crisis is easily depicted on what we see as necessary in the moment.
Right.
So if you see toilet paper as the great necessity in the moment, it probably means the crisis isn't that great, right?
Right.
If you see bread as like, I got to work all day just to get a loaf of bread, then that probably means that
Things are pretty rough.
things are bad.
That's like next level pandemic right there.
But I can tell you, if you are living in Revelation 6 because you've rejected Jesus as your savior, you're not raptured away, you're an unbeliever, you can go to Chad's house. He has plenty of toilet paper that he's stored up through this.
I actually did order a gigantic box from Amazon.
And do you have some bags of rice? I'm sure. So if you need something, if you're here, we're all gone. Well, at least I am. I'm not for sure about Chad and Derek, but look, I'm a believer. I'm raptured away. But if you need something, Chad's house is open.
We always have plenty of rice.
You always have plenty. There you go. Now you know where to find it. You can raid Chad's house.
Linda actually has this huge rice dispenser. It's pretty cool.
But what you're seeing here is you're seeing this desolation, right? The desolation. I think too of like leftover contamination from if a nuclear war was if a nuclear warhead was dropped onto a country.
Like Chernobyl.
Radiation.
Yeah. The milk, the cows, their milk was contaminated. They survived the bomb, but they were no good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, last verse here, last 2 verses, and we'll get out of here. Verse 7 and verse 8. And when I heard, when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard a voice of the 4th beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth to kill with the sword and with hunger and with death and with beasts of the earth. So the last horse here is disease. What you're seeing here is you're seeing a 4th part, what he says, a 4th part of the population of the earth is gone. This is staggering to think about, right? I mean, 8 billion something people on the face of the planet, and a fourth part of them die, and they die from just this, from this writer right here, which is essentially disease and desolation. And you'll notice this is what's interesting. You'll notice it's given to him. Notice to kill with. Notice what he kills with hunger, with death, with beast. Right.
Yeah.
So this is why we would say disease, or we would say pestilence at this point. That's what this is, some kind of understanding of that. Interesting that one man writes about the end of World War I. He says influenza and typhoid after World War I caused more death than the war itself. So after this war, you have all these cities that they've been given over to desolation, destruction, and all these things. And you'll notice that what comes in after them isn't good, right? It's not human flourishing. You don't drop a nuclear bomb someplace, and then the next thing is, oh, everybody in that city, they loved it. Now they're all happy and they're living. No, that's not what you're left with. You're left with desolation and destruction. Yeah. Notice the beast here. This is interesting. One author writes, he says he thinks the beast are rats, right? He thinks which can virtually thrive in any kind of environment. They have lots and lots of little rat babies. And so they carry all kinds of these disease with them. I mean, the rats have survived in this building for 100 and something years, right? I promise you, some of these rats that I've seen around here, they've lived here that long.
I knew there had to have been a reference to the rats of First Baptist Church in Anchorage.
The bell just rang. Is that for us, or was that no? That's for the school kids. If you heard the bell. Okay, so let's finish on this. What are we supposed to take away from this? Like, what's the takeaway here? Go get your vaccine shot. Is that what this is an argumentation for?
The chip implanted.
Chad?
Well, again, personally, my takeaway, and I'm not trying to use a subjective takeaway, but I mean, like, I really believe that what we can learn from this passage again is everything. Although right now in our lives it may seem like chaos, like no other time in my life, I'm turning on the news and I'm seeing just things that every day my mind is being blown,
Mm-hmm.
By just the level of ridiculousness that we're seeing in the chaos, and sometimes it feels as if God's lost control.
Right.
And this just reminds me that, again, we are moving towards, and what's beyond all of this is that day that we're around the throne, we're worshiping the Lamb.
Right.
And no matter what we may have to go through on our way to that, it's just comforting to me that God is going to lead us. We're not just in some chaotic cycle, but we're building, we're culminating to something, and God is in absolute control.
I think in some ways too, like, you see things happening in our world and you think, how could it possibly get any worse than this?
It's going to.
And the answer from the scripture is, oh, it's going to get a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It'll be much worse. Derek, what about you? Any particular takeaways for you from this passage?
I would strongly agree with Chad, how it's while it is kind of discouraging to see where we are, it's encouraging to see that not only has it been bad before, but that it's gonna
Such a great point.
it's gonna get better.
And Pastor, I just had a thought. You were just talking about that. How that should, we know as Christians, according to the scriptures, that we're not going to be present when this happens.
We're gone.
But we may have some neighbors
Absolutely.
that if we don't get the gospel to them, if we're not faithful in our witness, I mean, in other words, it should. We look around and see how bad things are now, and none of us would wish that on anybody, and yet we can prevent someone from having to go through that.
You're an evil person if you wish Revelation 6 on your neighbor.
Yeah. Right.
You know? And that's the call. That's the gospel witness. That's the urgency of the gospel witness. That's the urgency of evangelism, is the reality of the end without Jesus. And I think that's the point. This is anti-Jesus.
Yep.
This is anti-Christ. And that's what you get, right? Everything that the antichrist is, Jesus is not. And everything that Jesus is, the antichrist is not. And that's the idea here. The antichrist comes with false deception. The Antichrist comes with lies. The Antichrist comes as this, manipulative, deceptive politician. But Jesus is the true potentate of the earth. He's the King of Kings, right?
Yeah.
The Antichrist promises peace, but he delivers war. Jesus promises peace and he delivers peace because he's the Prince of Peace. The Antichrist brings famine. Jesus brings the bread of heaven, which if you eat of, you will never hunger again. That's why Jesus says, if you follow me, this is what awaits for you. So, but I think too, the Antichrist is everything that the world says it wants. The Antichrist promises and is everything that the world says it wants. But Jesus is everything that the world truly needs. But when you go, see, look, so for me, like, you go, okay, this all happens globally. I won't be here. It doesn't affect me. No. When you choose to operate in the world with an Antichrist spirit, when you try to do life without Christ, this is what you get. This is what you get. Now you're seeing it displayed here, but it's lived out in hearts and lives, in marriages, in relationships, in churches, and in nations all across the globe.
You're talking about on an individual.
I'm
personal
talking
level.
individually, personally. When you reject Christ, when you reject the words of Christ, when you reject the ways of Christ, you know what you get? Desolation, destruction, disease. Not disease like sickness, but disease of the soul, of the heart, right? That's all that you're left with. You're left with this. In Revelation 6, while it may not be happening in the globe just yet, it will one day. Man, it certainly is happening in marriages. It's certainly happening in people's hearts and lives when you reject the way of Jesus, when you refuse to allow him to be king. That is why we must allow him to be king, and that's why we must choose his way over our way. We must choose his word over the government's word. We must choose his direction and his commandments over anything else, over the feelings of our own hearts, over the thoughts of our own mind. We must go after Jesus, because when you don't, Revelation 6 is what you get. Okay, so next week we're going to go 9 to 17. Okay, so we'll finish out these seals next week, and I hope this was encouragement to you. I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the conversation side, and we'll do a little bit better next week. We'll talk the final two seals that'll be open. Martyrdom is one of them. We'll talk about forms of persecution in the world today, and how we should as Christians view that. And man, let's go after Jesus so we aren't left with an Antichrist in our own hearts and our own lives even today. God bless you, church family. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great evening.